Well, with permission, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'll make a statement on Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories. This weekend, the Israeli Defense Force started a new extensive ground operation throughout Gaza, Operation Gideon's Chariot. 5 Israeli divisions are now operating there. Prime Minister Netanyahu says that they're going to take control of the Strip, letting only minimal amounts of food reach Gazans. Madam Deputy Speaker, I quote Mr. Netanyahu. He says, just enough to prevent hunger. Fewer than 10 trucks entered Gaza yesterday. The UN and the World Health Organization have issued stark warnings of the threat of starvation hanging over hundreds of thousands of civilians. Madam Deputy Speaker, this is abominable. Civilians in Gaza facing starvation, homelessness, trauma, desperate for this war to end, now confront renewed bombardment, new displacement, and new suffering. And the remaining hostages, kept apart from their loved ones by Hamas for almost 600 days, are now at heightened risk from the war around them. Madam Deputy Speaker, 2 months ago, the ceasefire collapsed. Since then, the humanitarian catastrophe has rapidly intensified. For 11 weeks, Israeli forces have blockaded Gaza, leaving the World Food Programme without any remaining stocks. Israel has repeatedly struck hospitals, with 3 more hospitals in northern Gaza ceasing operations this weekend. Yet more aid workers and medical workers have been killed. After last year proved the deadliest year on record for humanitarian personnel, the diplomatic deadlock between Israel and Hamas has sadly also hardened. Despite the efforts of the United States, Qatar, and Egypt, which we of course support, no ceasefire has emerged. We repeat our demand that Hamas release all the hostages immediately and unconditionally, and reiterate that they cannot continue to run Gaza. Madam Deputy Speaker, we are now entering a dark new phase in this conflict. Netanyahu's government is planning to drive Gazans from their homes into a corner of the Strip to the south and permit them a fraction of the aid that they need. Yesterday, Minister Smodrick even spoke of Israeli forces cleansing Gaza, destroying what's left of residents, Palestinians, being relocated, he said, to third countries. We must call this what it is. It is extremism. It is dangerous. It is repellent. It is monstrous, and I condemn it in the strongest possible terms. Madam Deputy Speaker, Israel suffered a heinous attack on October the 7th, and the government has always backed Israel's right to defend itself. We have condemned Hamas and its abhorrent treatment of the hostages, and we have stood with families and demanded their loved ones be released. It's morally unjustifiable, it's wholly disproportionate, it's utterly counterproductive. Whatever Israeli ministers claim, this is not the way to bring the hostages safely home. Nearly all the hostages have been freed through negotiations, not military force. And that is why hostage families themselves and many other Israelis oppose this plan so strongly. Nor will this plan eliminate Hamas or make Israel secure. This war has left a generation orphaned and traumatised, ready for Hamas to recruit. As we learned in Northern Ireland, to defeat terrorists and their warped ideology, you cannot just rely on military might. You have to offer a viable political alternative, opposing the expansion of the war that's killed thousands of children is not rewarding Hamas. Madam Deputy Speaker, since entering office, we've taken concerted action in Gaza. We restored funding to UNRWA. We supported the independence of the international courts. We suspended arms export licences. We provided food and medical care to hundreds and thousands of Gazans. We've worked with Arab partners on a plan to ensure a reconstructed Gaza no longer run by Hamas. And since Israel restarted strikes on Gaza, this government has demanded Israel change course. Privately, in my conversations with Foreign Minister Saar and Strategic Affairs Minister Derman, publicly in repeated joint statements with my French and German counterparts, we've made clear that Israel's actions are intolerable. We have raised our concerns in the UN Security Council and before the International Court of Justice. Yesterday, my honourable friend, the Prime Minister, joined leaders from France and Canada strongly opposing the expansion of Israel's military operations. And the UK led a further statement with 27 partners criticising Israel's proposed new aid delivery mechanism and defending the essential humanitarian principles of the international system that the UK did so much to establish in the first place. Our message is clear. There is a UN plan ready to deliver aid at scale, needed with mitigations against aid diversion. There are brave humanitarians ready to do their jobs. There are over 9,000 trucks at the border. Prime Minister Netanyahu, end this blockade now and let the aid in. Regrettably, Madam Deputy Speaker, despite our efforts, this Israeli government's egregious actions and rhetoric have continued. They are isolating Israel from its friends and partners around the world, undermining the interests of the Israeli people, and damaging the image of the State of Israel in the eyes of the world. I find this deeply painful as a lifelong friend of Israel and a believer in the values that were expressed in its Declaration of Independence. As the Prime Minister and fellow leaders said yesterday, we cannot stand by in the face of this new deterioration. It is incompatible with the principles that underpin our bilateral relationship, rejected by members across this House, and frankly, it's an affront to the values of the British people. Therefore, today, I'm announcing that we have suspended negotiations with this Israeli government on a new free trade agreement. We will be reviewing cooperation with them under the 2030 bilateral roadmap. The Netanyahu's government's actions have made this necessary, Madam Deputy Speaker. Today, my honourable friend, the Minister for the Middle East, is summoning the Israeli ambassadors to the Foreign Office to convey this message. I say now to the people of Israel, I want a strong friendship with you based on shared values, with flourishing ties between our people and societies. We are unwavering in our commitment to your security and to your future, to countering the very real threat from Iran, the scourge of terrorism and the evils of anti-Semitism. But the conduct of the war in Gaza is damaging our relationship with your government. And as the Prime Minister has said, if Israel pursues this military offensive, as it has threatened, failing to ensure the unhindered provision of aid, we will take further action in response. The UK, Mr. Speaker, will not give up on a two-state solution. Israelis living in secure borders, recognised and at peace with their neighbours, free from the threat of terrorism. Palestinians living in their own state, in dignity and security, free of occupation. The two-state solution remains the ideal framework, indeed the only framework for a just and lasting peace. But as the House knows, its very viability is in peril, endangered not only by the war in Gaza, but by the spread of illegal Israeli settlements and outposts across the occupied West Bank, with the explicit support of this Israeli government. There are now weekly meetings to improve new settlement construction. Settlement approval has accelerated, while settler violence has soared. Here too we have acted, repeatedly pressing for change in this course and direction, sanctioning 7 entities in October and signing a landmark agreement to bolster support for the Palestinian Authority when Prime Minister Mustafa visited London just last month. But here too we must do more. Today we are therefore imposing sanctions on a further 3 individuals and 4 entities involved in the settler movement. I have seen for myself the consequences of settler violence, the fear of its victim, the impunity of its perpetrators. Today we are demonstrating again that we will continue to act against those who are carrying out heinous abuses of human rights. Madam Deputy Speaker, despite the glimmer of hope from January's ceasefire, the suffering from this conflict has worsened. But January showed another path was possible. We urge Netanyahu's government to choose this path. The world is judging. History will judge them. Blocking aid, expanding the war, dismissing the concerns of your friends and partners, this is indefensible and it must stop. I commend this statement to the House.
Shadow Foreign Secretary Priti Patel.
Mr. Speaker, and I'm grateful to the Foreign Secretary for advance sight of his statement. The humanitarian situation in Gaza is appalling, and we continue to see the intolerable suffering of life being lost. A sustainable end to this terrible conflict is urgently and desperately needed, and that means the release of the remaining 58 hostages from the cruel Hamas captivity that we've all witnessed for too long. It means a significant increase in aid getting into Gaza. And it means a new future for Gaza, free from the terror and misery caused by Hamas, who bear responsibility for the suffering we've seen unfolding since the 7th of October 2023. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'll take each of these 3 issues in turn. Firstly, on the hostages, can the Foreign Secretary explain what recent engagements he's had on trying to secure their release and return to their loved ones? Is Britain contributing to an overall strategy to free the hostages? Are we in the room for these critical discussions? Because we know the hard work that went into all of this at the beginning of the year. Secondly, on aid. I've been asking the government for clarity over the way it is using its influence to get aid in for weeks. On the 6th and the 14th of May, we questioned the Minister for the Middle East on steps being taken to unblock aid delivery. We've asked the government for details on the engagement it was having with Israel, what the response was to Israel's plans for an alternative aid delivery model, what practical solutions the UK has worked on with Israel to address their concerns about aid diversion, and no substantive answers were given. So what has the government been doing in recent weeks to facilitate the delivery of aid and find practical solutions with other countries to get aid in? Have the government just been criticising Israel, or have they been offering to work constructively to find solutions on aid delivery and securing a ceasefire? We see from the joint statement issued yesterday that the government and other international partners may not be supporting or participating in the aid delivery model proposed by Israel. So can the Foreign Secretary explain why that conclusion has been reached? If I can return to my statement, How does the non-participation help to get aid into Gaza and to stop the suffering that is being experienced by everyone? And while members shake their heads, we should be all focused on securing that. Members opposite should be ashamed of themselves, because the focus of this House should be on getting aid into Gaza. Because the UK, and I can speak as someone that has supported aid getting into Gaza and other humanitarian crises, and the member opposite might want to even intervene rather than calling me out and saying that my comments are shameful, because the UK has consistently been a leader when it comes to world aid delivery. So we should be at the forefront of finding practical solutions, supporting the delivery of aid of those in need. So has the Foreign Secretary, with the approach that he has just outlined towards Israel, done all he can to secure an increase in aid? And has the UK's influence actually fallen now when it comes to this entire aid discussion and also the dialogue we've had with Israel? Third, on the future of Gaza, the government has agreed with our position that there can be no future for Hamas. That's completely non-negotiable. So what practical steps are being taken to end their role in Gaza and dismantle the terrorist infrastructure? What coordinated international steps are being taken to stem the flow of money, weapons and support bankrolled by Iran? We're still awaiting an Iran strategy coming from the government. Can the Foreign Secretary expand upon this? We had the statement last month from the Foreign Secretary on the MOU with the Palestinian Authority. Can he give an update on what steps are being taken to improve the governance of the PA? Because the MOU posed many questions, and I don't need to go over those questions. I've raised them previously. The UK obviously needs to be involved in this process, given our historic role in, for example, the Abraham Accords. This may be our best shot when it comes to regional peace, and the Foreign Secretary must convince us that we have influence when it comes to the ceasefire and negotiating a better future in this part of the world. And can I ask the Foreign Secretary what discussions have taken place with one country that does have influence, and that is the United States administration, when it comes to peace efforts and also getting aid into Gaza? Madam Deputy Speaker, I just want to conclude by saying a few things. Strong words will do little to resolve the real challenges that are taking place and the suffering that we are seeing day in, day out. And it should be a cause, that's a matter for your government to address. It should be the cause of concern that we've reached a situation now where the statements and actions, if I may say so, that have been echoed by the government today, and by that I'm referring to the Prime Minister's joint statement with France and Canada. That statement and actions of this government have now been supported by Hamas, a terrorist organisation that I prescribed as Home Secretary. They've actually put out a statement. I'm sure the Foreign Secretary has seen that. Now, the Foreign Secretary's decision to tear up trade negotiations with Israel and if I may finish, and actually stop the bilateral roadmap will not only, it's not shocking, these are important questions. These are important questions. So can I just ask them, if the Foreign Secretary if the Foreign Secretary can't answer these questions, that's fine. So then please do answer these questions, because they're important. Well, I would if members didn't keep interrupting, because it's quite obvious that the government doesn't want to respond to these important questions. I think it is important now, because there is so much human suffering. I understand the points that the Foreign Secretary has made with regards to the steps that he's taken with Israel. But how is this going to help now when it comes to wider security issues, threats from Iran, and how do we know that this will not be self-defeating in any way forward?
Foreign Secretary.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, for decades there has been a cross-party commitment to a two-state solution in the pursuit of peace. Friends of both Israel and Palestinian people across this House. It was the Thatcher government that imposed an arms embargo after Israel's invasion of Lebanon in 1982. It was David Cameron who first called Gaza a prison camp, and it was Theresa May's government that championed the UN Resolution 2334 on settlements. It was William Hague who worked with John Kerry on the push for peace and condemned the idea of moving the British embassy to Jerusalem. Sadly today, it seems that the Conservative Party, or at least the current front bench, is refusing to confront the appalling reality of what is happening in Gaza and what the Netanyahu government is doing. The Honourable Lady seems incapable of offering any serious criticism about the egregious actions by the Netanyahu government, unlike many honourable members, on her own side. I think the whole House should be able to utterly condemn the Israeli government's denial of food to hungry children. It is wrong. It's appalling. Will she condemn it? Well, the whole House has seen. Opposing the expansion of a war that has killed thousands of children is not rewarding Hamas. Opposing the displacement of hundreds of thousands of civilians is not rewarding Hamas. On this side of the House, we are crystal clear. What is happening is morally wrong, unjustifiable, and it needs to stop. And that's why we've taken the actions we have. She knows that hostage families are deeply concerned with what is happening. They're deeply concerned with their loved ones. She knows that. She knows that we oppose the blockade on aid. Does she? It wasn't clear from her statement whether she does oppose the blockade of aid to children. And she should note, our diplomats led that call, 27 countries joining us, to condemn what is happening and stand on the side of truth and history. What a shame she couldn't bring herself to do so today.